All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining. I suggest we give maybe 30 more seconds as I see a lot of people are joining us as we speak, and then we can start. Okay, good. I think we have a lot of people in already. Obviously, more people will be joining as we go, but I wanted to say hello to everyone and welcome you to today's webinar on UI and UX modernization. This is a joint event that we're doing with Progress and Resolute Software, who's one of our official service partners. We essentially sat down and decided to organize a webinar on this topic because we've seen a lot of interest and demand in the industry the last, I would say, probably a couple of years around this topic. And we felt that it's a good moment that we gather our experts in this field to share their observations and tips and things that you should avoid if you're just starting to plan your UI modernization project, or maybe are in the middle of it and are maybe feeling stuck and not sure how to proceed. We felt that this is something that our clients and maybe even the entire community would find valuable. We're hoping that their insights and the stories that we'll share will help shed some light and clarify some of the most common misconceptions about how a proper UI modernization strategy should be planned and executed. We will share the recording of this webinar probably within the next day or two with you, and we'll also have some time for questions at the end. So if you want to ask us anything, feel free to post your questions in the chat, and we've left about 10 or 15 minutes at the end to go over them. We have also prepared a quick poll question, and we'll probably bring it to the screen around halfway into the discussion because we want to make sure that we are understanding your expectations and your potential struggles about your modernization properly. So I would like to now introduce today's speakers. And we have with us Svetlin Nikolaev, who is the director of UX here at Progress. He's been with Progress and before that with Telerik for many years, has a long experience in the UX industry, so I'm sure you'll find his insights quite valuable.
Hi, guys.
Thank you, Svetlin, for taking the time. And then we also have Sean Gargilio, who's joining us on behalf of Resolute. He was actually also part of the Progress team a few years ago, but now he's managing the projects on the Resolute side, and he'll be sharing some interesting examples of real-life projects that we've been doing together.
Greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. And we also have Brandon Nice. He's also joining us from Resolute Software. He's currently a business development manager there, but he has a long history in the UX field as well. So he'll be sharing his tips and perspective, a millennial perspective, with you on some of the more critical points and aspects of the UX modernization journey. We've planned this webinar more as a conversation or a panel discussion rather than a long presentation. We didn't want to bore you with hundreds of slides. We wanted to make sure that it's interesting and engaging for all of you. And we'll go over some of the key steps or decisions that you need to make before you embark on the UI modernization journey, like why modernize in the first place, or how to identify the main problems in your current UI and UX, and what are some of the best practices for solving each of them. And we'll take you through the main stages of a typical UI modernization project and some common pitfalls that you need to avoid and some good practices to follow at each of those stages. So let's start the discussion with probably the most fundamental question here, which is why do we need to modernize it all? What problems can that solve? And Svetlina, I would give the word to you to share your thoughts on that.
Sure, thank you, Simona. It's a great question, why modernize? When is the time to reevaluate the user experience and what are the consequences if we don't? We can start with some indicators that can tell us that we need to modernize our solution. And the first one is the performance. Is our solution performing on the level of the industry today? The acceptance bar for user experience is getting higher and higher, and new solutions are disrupting the industry by optimizing the customer experience while solving traditional problems. Our solutions are made for a specific purpose, and that is to resolve the client problem to serve a customer need. We need the process streamlined, and we need to create a pleasant experience, and we need to make the users aware of what is going on with our solution to manage their expectations. If somewhere in the user flow we have a gap or we have a steep learning curve, it results in frustrated customers and creates churn for our products. We should listen and evaluate to the client feedback constantly, prioritizing and fixing high impact problems in the experience and in the user interface. Not to mention the standards for usability and accessibility that we need to cover just to make it into the customer solution evaluation lists. Neglecting such indicators could result in losing brand reputation and competitive advantage that will eventually hurt our business.
Indeed, and this is actually probably been one of the most common pains that clients have come to us with, that they've been losing market share and to their competitors, and they don't really understand why that is happening. And very often, as we start digging into it, it turns out that it's due to a pretty suboptimal UI, and that there's this new and more demanding generation playing a role in that process.
Indeed. I mean, if you look at those issues, if you just turn the slide back 1 second, Brandon, just want to look at those quick. You know, folks in the Generation X generation, in my generation, we're used to performance issues. We're used to having, you know, the little wheels spin around and around, and we have some patience for it because we've experienced it for years. But there are some in the workforce right now that have a very different idea of this. And they're becoming a force. These are, of course, the 20-somethings and the millennials. And speaking for the entire generation now, I will now turn it over to your representative, Brandon.
Yeah, I take the mantle of all millennials heavily. No, what Sean's explaining is right though. I mean, if you look at the statistics, the world workforce is getting older. And the millennials are moving along right with that. And if you look at the generational, definitions, the youngest of the millennials is turning 21 this year. So that whole generation has reached adulthood. I don't say maturity, I say adulthood, because I'm not going to comment on our maturity. But I am going to comment on what Sean said is our lack of patience. And there's a number of different factors that come into that, but the general idea behind it is just generals by nature seem to be less patient and more error prone than our predecessors. But it's based on a number of different like methodologies and ideas. We want to fail fast and fail often. We're okay. We have a healthy relationship with failure in some regards. We also were brought up that straight A's was like the ultimate achievement. So we do want to strive for perfection and efficiency and all of this. But as as millennials start to take over more of the leadership roles in business, we're going to start to see that patience, that lack of patience, and that desire to continue to move at an aggressive pace. Pretty, it's just becoming much more prevalent in business. So and what that comes with is just rapid pace. Things aren't slowing down. User habits are changing all the time. They're evergreen. Technology advancement isn't slowing down. We're adopting new things like 5G, and IoT has become a big part of our life, and among a myriad of other things. So just everything being in flux creates a bit of it creates a bit of an issue where companies who maybe haven't equipped themselves with people or skill sets or things, there's a bit of a skills gap or a solutions gap that exists. And Svetlin, I think you're probably the best to speak on this. Like when you look at a team composition, when you're trying to accommodate or trying to do this modernization effort, like this is really critical to look at.
Yes, this is one of the biggest issues with the companies that struggle with modernization. One factor is the lack of internal user experience expertise, and many software companies struggle finding great UX leaders for their teams. Another factor is the specifics of each solution and product. Everything from the targeted audience to the business process and the problem resolution differs, and there is not one just simple fix of the user experience to fit everywhere. There are patterns certainly and standards that can be followed, but you need a UX expert to dive into your specific solution and customer needs in order to present a good modernization strategy that will deliver these improvements to your business. Another vector of concern is the urgency for such modernization and the execution model. Should you wait to reach a certain milestone to enable modernization? Can it be executed in parallel with the existing business processes? How we measure efficiency and outcome also is the big question here. A good process enables us to measure successfully the modernization strategy and predicts the outcomes of and the results of such endeavors.
Indeed, and before I let Brendan dive into the stages of a typical UI modernization project, I just wanted to add to what Svetlin just explained about the solution gap that we've seen that through the years. So of what issues our clients face. So we are aware of the challenge that you might face during your modernization journey, and we've constantly been striving to provide you with all the key resources you may need, the right UI components, the blog posts or the guidelines or webinars like this one, to help you navigate as easily and effortlessly through that journey. But we also know that sometimes that may not be enough to just explain to you how you should do it. Sometimes you need someone to sit with your team and do the whole project together, and we have teams that can help you with that as well. So we're trying to leverage all of our resources, from the most basic to completely doing it for you if that's what you need, because ultimately we want you to be successful in this effort. And if you feel that you need more help than what we are offering as the online resource, feel free to reach out to us. We are open to have those discussions with each one of you. So Brendan, I'll let you dive into the stages of the typical modernization project now.
Awesome. Thanks, Simona. Before I do that, I do want to mention we've got a lot of questions so far. Thank you so much for everybody for putting those questions in. A couple about the presentation. You'll get a recording. You'll get a link. I'll also bounce these slides out to a PDF for you so that you can have those. There was a question about that. So we'll get the slides to you as well. But now let's go ahead and jump into the modernization process. So basically what we've kind of created over the last bit is as a sum of a body of knowledge that doesn't, exist completely in us. We have looked at a wide variety of projects and how they've been managed, and basically have come up with kind of a 6-step process, well, 5+1 really, of how a UI UX modernization project should go. We're going to kind of dive back and forth between like how you could lead this on your own, because this is a process that you could just do yourself. It doesn't require consultants like us, or tools that Progress creates. But this process, with the help of a consultant, could possibly give you some fresh set of eyes that you don't normally get when you're doing it yourself. So just consider that as we kind of talk about this. We will kind of show a bit of how doing it yourself has benefits and how having a consultant has benefits as well. So as we get started, you'll see the steps here, and I mentioned 5+1. We kind of lump the first 5: requirements collection, research, analysis, prototyping, and validation into one, what we call an assessment, and then implementation is separate. That's the actual taking the plan and doing it. So we'll kind of break this out and talk about implementation separately. But to start, the first part of this project is requirements collection. And if you're doing this project on your own, this is where you assemble your internal stakeholders and try to come up with the requirements that you need to satisfy the business issues that you've uncovered. So really, this is going to be a lot of just kind of interviews and coming together, and just collaborating together to get a common set of the business objectives that you're looking to solve with the UI UX modernization project. And Sean, over the years, I know that you've seen this process play out and seen the requirements collection process, like that step. I know you have stories about this. Can you share one with us?
Sure. And first off, you really can't overstate how important these first couple steps are.
Yeah.
Because obviously you want to be shooting towards the right goal. You have to know what problem you're solving, where are you going with this? And this is the first step. And generally what this requires is, ideally, best practice wise, is a cross section of internal personnel and perhaps clients, and try to mix up the roles also. So you don't want a room full of technical people. Should have some marketing people, some operational people. And also, just make the room as diverse as possible, as far as age and gender and background, because this is a global world and we do global business, so that it should be a very representative group of people that can be as objective as possible, and they should kind of walk through these first few steps. At times I've seen it go wrong. So one comes to mind. I was at a conference. It was a company that's been in business for a long time. So it was kind of the annual get together for all the users. These people knew each other, for years and years and years. And the big announcement was going to be a redesign of this main application where more of these people spend all day in. So the CEO was leading the session. It was a general session, so everyone was in the room. There's hundreds of people there, and so the CEO comes on. He starts out and he throws up an image on the big screen, which is a redesign, and it looks really good. Their old system was very functional, but it was getting a little long in the tooth as far as look and feel. So it starts out well. There's obviously an effort put into this, the screen, and it's just demoware at this point. But then he says, so I know everyone has, a lot of people have made comments about, how our app works and how, what it looks like and what it feels like. What would you do? It was a really open-ended question. It's something to the effect of, what do you think should happen to the system? And of course, now the same people that always raise their hand in sessions first raise their hand. And these are the people that, always like to talk. They like to hear the sound of their own voice. So pontification starts, and there's pontificators that are starting. And it's starting to get a little bit personal. So they're critiquing. So now the other side of the house, the clients that kind of protect the people are hosting, they start defending the company, and just chaos generally goes, from there. It's a very uncomfortable room after a while. And I think the lesson learned is, you need a representative sample. Everyone has an opinion about UX. And if you just throw it out to the free world, it's not productive, and it's going to become a mess. So a good committee that starts off in this process, in this stage, and moves with the project as it moves forward is the best practice.
Yeah. And you may notice here in the slide, we say up to 5 stakeholders. We have a starting point. It's up to 5 to start. Every project's a little bit different. Sometimes we need 10, sometimes we need 15, sometimes we need 50. Like this is all kind of just general guidance. We recommend that you start small and expand as needed instead of starting large and paring down when you're considering your requirements collection phase. So once you've had the opportunity to get together, define your actual business objectives for the project, this is where research really starts to take over, and research is a huge deal. You can't, I'm going to say that at every step, and I wish that I could emphasize it enough. Each one of these steps is very important. That's why they're steps. During the research phase, this is where we start to utilize all of the people and the business cases or the business objectives that we've assembled, and we start to put them to user experiences. So we start to develop the user persona. We take screenshots of the current solution, and we start to get kind of a body of knowledge about what's going on within that. And as a showcase, we'll kind of talk about this specific dashboard as kind of an example. So this is a dashboard that represented some H1N1 statistics. And you can see here it's laid out nicely. I mean, but it was designed in 2009. It uses some old design themes, some coloring that maybe isn't super modern, linking styles that aren't modern, just a number of different things that we would say at first glance, this is out of date. I would like to see this modernized. So in addition to the screenshot, we'll take user videos, we'll start to get feedback both from internal and external parties, and look at user reviews, feedback, all of that stuff. And that turns into, our body of knowledge to prepare for analysis, which is the next most important step of the process here. And as we go through analysis, again, this is where we will start to break down all of the comments and data points that we've collected, including metrics and all of that stuff. And we start to piece it apart. Like we break it down and analyze it into very specific user flows. This is where we build your sitemap and a scenario map. So we get a really good idea of how the solution is constructed, how you anticipate or intend your users to get through the solution, as well as how the users are actually using it. Because oftentimes in UI UX, what we find is that there's a disconnect between the user path that is actually occurring and the intended user path. And one of our goals is to rectify that, because if the user wants to use it a specific way, unless it's some kind of groundbreaking thing, I think that we want to adopt the way that people use their use softwares in general. So there are some general styling and guidelines and things that we adhere to on that. And during the analysis, that's where we start to assign that.
Yeah, and I think this phase, I think, is really crucial, because determining what problems you need to solve is something that would either set you on the right path, or you're going to invest a lot of time and money in the wrong direction. And you're going to end up, after a lot of money and a lot of time, with a more beautiful UI, but carrying out all the problems with the user experience that you had in the first place. So the requirements gathering phase and the research analysis are really crucial to make sure that you have identified the actual problems, not the problem that you think you have, but the problems that your users really experience using your tool.
It's a really good way to put it. And because I think a lot of times you start off a UX project thinking one thing. For instance, we just, maybe it's the color scheme and the nav. Maybe we have to fix that. But as you go through these first 3 steps, more times than not, you find that really isn't, the end of it. There's something deeper. And if you do your homework, and this is your homework, these steps are your homework, you get to this phase, and now the creative process starts because you have determined, what the real situation is. So there's a tendency to run through these phases a bit quick because it's not exciting, right? You're not getting into the creativity part of it yet, and there aren't whiteboards and people demoing and lots of hands moving, and but if you do your homework at this point, you're poised for success.
But this phase can be very visual though too. Like I know in our office we have big whiteboards that have the user stories with sticky notes, and they have lines and things. Like this is still a very exciting and visual part of the process. But you're right, Sean. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of homework. And a couple of things that really general guidance wise, no secrets. Like there's no secrets when it comes to this. Put everything down on paper and look at it objectively. Don't look at it in terms of, well, this tool only does this certain thing. Forget it. What you need to do is define and plan for what you want, not for what's available. So, and then, if you can't figure out how to make what you want, that's where we kind of step in and kind of help you figure out what's available and work that direction.
This is why a party that's a little more objective really helps, because it's hard to you're working in a company for 10 years, and perhaps you were part of putting together the UX and the UI. It's kind of hard to be objective at that point. It's your baby, and it's really hard to call your baby ugly. And sometimes you have to hire someone that has the courage to critique the baby, and that's a big reason why I think that another party coming in is effective, because they can just look at this, and there's no sacred cows. You have to have a thick skin also, because a lot of times a lot of people's work went into the current look and feel. But the reality is, it's not that it's poorly done. It's that the technology choices we have now are so much better than they were just a few years ago.
Yeah.
That this also becomes a constant process too. It'd be nice to say you can do this once and stop for 5 years and then go back, but the truth is you can't. It's continuous.
Yep, it's continuous, and the pace is only increasing.
And you have to be able to take critique from a 25-year-old at this point. If he says it's ugly and it doesn't do the job, then probably that's the case. And their generation, as we spoke about already, they have their weight already in the business making decisions. So you have to listen to the 25 and 35-year-olds at this point. You just have to, for business sake.
Unfortunately, you do.
If they're not happy. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say, the length of time it takes for someone to make a decision on whether your offering is worth looking at is ridiculous. It's 5-10 seconds. That's all you have. And this is why this is so critical.
Yeah, you can't waste your time. So in an effort of not wasting time, after the analysis phase, this all tends to be very conceptual. It's on paper. There's a lot of data and loose drawings and things like that. But really nothing has come to form. So this is where we start to bring actual life to kind of the on paper vision by creating prototypes and validating some of the findings and soliciting more feedback from the prototypes that we deliver. So this is another iterative approach. We start with something small, like a wireframe, and these typically are just made to give you kind of a general layout. So looking back at the H1N1 dashboard that we presented, you could see that there was a lot of data presented, but there was a goal with this new modernization effort to present more data more easily. And so what we needed to do was figure out a way to, silo and position a number of elements on the screen to present that data. So what we did here was created an interactive wireframe using Adobe Xd. And I'm hoping that you guys can still see this.
Okay.
So what we have here is screen one of a wireframe, and you can see here there's some COVID-19 data. That was the intent of this project. which I'm sure by now we're all very familiar with this kind of thing. So a wireframe for this, we see a graphical representation as well as a map representation of where the data is geographically, and some spaces up here. So just giving a general layout here. And I do see a question in here. That's a great question. Favorite tools for wireframes? We use Adobe Xd sometimes, but Svetlin, there's a ton of options, right?
Yeah, the landscape for design tools is vast, and there are many alternatives. We have Figma, Sketch, Adobe XD. They provide advanced level of design capabilities and prototyping capabilities, and enable us designers to create low and high fidelity prototypes, make them interactive, present the design intent as close to the real life experience as possible.
Right. And if you need help selecting one of those, I'm sure we could give you a recommendation. Adobe XD is convenient for us for this purpose, so that's kind of what we're presenting today. But yeah, so the first process, we create some low fidelity wireframes just to give us an idea of where data is going to live. And then we move on to more high fidelity prototypes. So this is where we start to make design choices, we incorporate colors, we bring in the data visualizations. And this is where, sorry about that. This is where Progress really helps out with some of these data visualization tools and themes and things. So again, we'll hop into the Adobe Xd Demo here real quick, tempting the fate of the demo gods live. Let's see here. And we're in. Cool. All right. So you can see here, this is the dashboard. And these Adobe Xd things they're super interactive when they're built out. So what we have here is we have total confirmed cases represented on this graph. When we click on new, you can see how the graph changes to reflect new data, total deaths as well. And you can see the change of the data based on whether you want to see it represented geographically or as a graph. And then there's also filtration over here with highlights for specific country information, all of this. And again, highly visible. This shows you kind of the life of our concept as we develop it, or as you develop it. So once you've done that analysis and can start to put it on paper, it gets really exciting at this point. And then just to also show you kind of the breadth of some of these UI UX prototyping tools, it gives us the ability to do a lot of cross-platform design as well. So we can show you a demo of the experience from the same kind of design theming, but used on a mobile platform, and just delivering a very consistent experience across platforms. There's nothing I hate more than going to a mobile site and a desktop site and seeing a completely different experience with buttons in different spots and things like that. If I interact with you and your company, as a millennial, I expect that experience to be consistent. And I don't know if that's a millennial thing or if that's just a me thing, but I expect it. So you can see here a very consistent experience over mobile as well. And these are live. These are something that you can create commentary on. So we're looking for feedback at this stage. We're trying to dial in exactly what the concept is, so that once we're ready to package this as an assessment with an implementation plan, if you've done this yourself, you can take this to a consultant and have them help you. You can give it to your internal team and they can begin work on it. You can start to develop the development roadmap for that. It's really up to you, but once you've gotten to this prototyping phase and have really seen the vision come to life, it doesn't get more exciting than that. That's like the really cool time of development and modernization. So I think, Simona, do we want to go ahead and do the poll question now?
We could, yes. So we could maybe do it now before sharing the details around the implementation. Yeah, we wanted to basically hear your thoughts on this and get a better understanding of your expectations or potential struggles that you might be expecting as part of your modernization journey. So you can choose as many of these as apply to your case. It's a multiple choice question. So we'll leave it on for about a minute to gather your insights and just to read out the question. So we were wondering what resources would help you better execute your UI modernization project. And from what we've seen, that could either be a need for more information. So maybe you have the internal resources, but you just need some guidelines or tips or blog posts to help you, with some best practices on how to do it on your own. Then the second option is easy to use UI components, something that we're already doing either way. But maybe if you have the internal resources, having the right tools that are properly built would be sufficient for you to be able to execute it in the right way. Then the third option is consulting from external experts, where you have the people to do it, but maybe need some guidance in the beginning to sit down with your team and set the right direction and tell you what's the best path to follow, and then do the remaining part internally. The fourth option is outsourcing the entire project to an external UI and UX team, whether you maybe don't have designers in-house or don't have the time to spend to research that. So you want to have someone do it for you and apply it to your business. And then the fifth option is something else that maybe we didn't think of, and we would be curious to hear what that might be. All right, wonderful. Yeah, we have the results already.
Awesome.
Perfect. Yeah, well, that's an interesting feedback. I think it gives us a good idea of where we need to focus more efforts on, and that's what we were aiming for.
And
I
I
just
just
yeah,
want to bring a quick thing. I'm sorry, Simona, but just to
yeah,
give you an idea of what kind of project we're looking at here. When we go from the beginning phases, we start with requirements gathering, and we end up with a prototype. We're talking about weeks and not months here, if it's done well. One thing that could delay is you're getting people's feedback and getting their availability and getting people together. Could be a delay, but this is not a massive project if run, if there's a good project manager on it and you're asking for feedback and people are delivering when they say they will deliver with information. So I know it looks a little intimidating, but it can go quickly and it can be fairly efficient. So just wanted to kind of bring that point forth.
For sure. I want to hit a couple questions that came through real quick before we go on to implementation. One of the questions was on the extent to which we engage customers in the UI UX relation. And Sean, you mentioned this a little bit. I think the general guidance is not too much and not too little when considering adding customers to your project. If your information is sensitive, like if you have IP that you want to protect, NDAs are a good tool that you can use to bind those people to not sharing that information, and just being very clear with them that they are part of some kind of internal program, helping with the design. And these are going to be your most trusted customers. You don't want to just offer this up to anybody. This isn't something where you say, I mean, unless you want to start like a beta program and get a lot more stuff, but I think beta programs are typically used to like generate usage metrics, like get data on how many and how much you can handle, which is a different objective. Like we're talking about something different. So in here, a short list of your most trusted customers, and if you need to protect yourself, talk to your legal counsel, but an NDA is a good tool for that.
Yeah, and most customers will be under NDA already. And you want a good cross section too. Some long-standing clients, some newer clients, and I would say their involvement should really start obviously from the beginning in the requirements gathering phase, somewhere in requirements and research, and then it should go through the prototype because the people that are involved with this are going to take some ownership of it, and they're going to be champions for you moving forward. So having them get to the part where the cool visualization is created is important. So I would say at that point, once you've got that prototype, that their job is basically done, because now it's about designing it, it's about doing it.
Right.
But yeah, have them involved in a good bit of it, because you'll get a lot from a business sense out of it too. You know, you'll get some goodness out of your client base.
Right. And then the next question, as we kind of move into implementation, and again, this is where we take the concepts, everything that we went through during requirements gathering, analysis, research, prototyping, that's all packaged together. And now we're ready to actually start implementing that solution. This is another question that came. This is another question that came in, and it says there are many trends, and it's tempting to incorporate aesthetic components that might not align with the status quo. How do you determine when to stop modernizing too much? And actually, we're going to talk about a bit of a case study on that as we talk about implementation. So one of our clients, a company called Amitas, they're cybersecurity experts. They are super smart on this stuff. And they approached us with a bit of a different business challenge. So as you can see here, there's a very clean looking website, a very clean looking solution. But they were concerned that there were some specific metrics that weren't correlating to what they felt was a good design, like a good UI UX. So they approached us, and we started to go through some of the requirements collection. What exactly is the problem? Well, people are getting to our website and then they're leaving. They're not clicking through to the solutions. They're not interacting with the elements the way that we expected them to. And so, okay, here's where we start to do our research. We dig into how they intended to have the solution made, how users are using it, started to develop that analysis on all those things, and then we developed a much different look to address some of these. And Sean, feel free to like chime in on some of these changes here because it's quite a drastic change.
Yeah, and another one of these cases where you start with one goal and you end with another. And the first was to make it look like cybersecurity. If you look at these colors, the look and feel, it takes into consideration how serious this topic is. So I think it matches. But what was really determined was that the flow of the actual site needed some work. Excuse me, Georgia is in bloom right now, so it's got my voice. But so what really had to be looked at is representing their services and who they were a bit more clearly. So that's kind of where it's fun. It started off as let's make a site that looks like cybersecurity, and we ended up, I think, finding out that the navigation needed a little work. And the recent stats are showing now that people are staying on a site longer. They are looking at the actual offerings longer. So and the great thing is you can get this information so quickly with some of these tools that are out now at a very detailed level. So there's measurable results. So yeah, we started out with a simple goal, and I think solve the business problem along the way by doing the research, by getting, working, really doing our homework.
Right. So just to speak to some of the design changes that we implemented here, we tried to make sure that the services were more front and center to align more with the kind of propensities of user like use. So we wanted to make sure that everything that the user needed to see was in the top third, obviously throwing everything else a little bit lower on the screen, and leveraging the content, leveraging the text to really put it front and center and give the immediate message to the customer right away. Because we don't have time to, this while aesthetically pleasing and a sound design, this didn't serve the need. So moving towards this other more, not necessarily, we're not going to say modern because they're equally modern. This one just serves the business case a lot better. And during that process, like Sean said, we were able to integrate tools that allowed us to measure the changes that we were making along the way. And so to answer that question, to go back to that, everything kind of needs to be measured. When you make a change, the best practice is to see if that either helped or hurt or didn't make any change. And then you can start to see the kinds of changes that if you make them, make no impact, the kinds of changes that if you make them, they make a high impact, and whether that impact is negative or positive. So it's a practice of recording everything.
Exactly. And I think Amatas is actually a pretty good example of a company that didn't really have problems with the UI in the beginning. They had a pretty good interface to start with. The problem to solve there was the user experience, where they just wanted to make sure that clients were converting at a better rate. So how do we optimize that? So while there was also an evolution in the interface, the bigger impact and the more measurable success was with the user experience, where you end up with the user experience that gets you more clients and wins you more business. And this is, I would say, probably the more critical part of the modernization. Yeah, it's nice for it to look good, but it needs to win you more business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And just to go back to the implementation phase, to add some context to that, because here I think this, again, Amatas is a great example of that, because the implementation is indeed, yeah, where we build the whole thing, but the implementation without the first step, which is the assessment, wouldn't really get you anywhere. So the first stage that, and if you go to the Telerik site and you see the details about all the 3 steps, but essentially we've divided them in 3 main stages, and each of them is more or less independent. You can choose to only go with 1 or get all 3, depending on your case. But we want to make sure that we start with a good analysis of your current situation, what works for your current UI and what doesn't, what's the path to success, what problems you need to solve, to make sure we've identified those and have drawn the direction in which you need to go. You go out with the low fidelity prototype, so you know how the end application would look like, and we would also provide you a pretty detailed breakdown of the implementation effort, so you have a pretty clear idea of where you stand and what would it cost in terms of time and effort to implement this whole modernization project. Now, whether you choose to go with us to deliver that or no, that's up to you. But we want to make sure that you go on the assessment phase with enough knowledge and understanding to still get you to a successful result. Now, with the implementation, obviously, we bring all of these findings and visual clues and decisions regarding the user journey into reality. So this is where we build your new application. And it's an iterative process. We work with your team. We make sure that we're all aligned at all times, making sure that we're going the same direction and going from the same thing, both visually and in terms of the user experience. And the third phase or step that we've identified is more of a high-end UI design approach for those who want to be a top of the market brand and always be on top of the wave, where we do all the advanced usability tests and create design systems to make sure that your presence across all platforms is consistent to your users, and we have style guides to make sure that you're talking to your clients in the same way, regardless of where they join from. And this understanding that modernization isn't really a one-time thing. So with the digital age now accelerates these processes constantly. So if in the past you had to modernize 1 every 10 years, right now it's almost a continuous process. So with the third phase, we make sure that you're constantly keeping up with the trends, which are constantly changing. So
Right.
it's really an ongoing process if you
Well,
want to be top of the market.
Yeah, like you said, the leaders are doing this iteratively. They're the ones that, you go onto Facebook and you see one tiny logo change and you're like, I barely noticed that. It didn't impact my usability. But then you do notice and you're like, oh, that's different. I like that.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of examples of the wins. And you just do those little wins over and over and over and over again. You just win a whole bunch. It's kind of how it works.
You almost don't notice them, but they work.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I'll quickly show here we did also make considerations on the Amitas solution for mobile to really get this. And there was a question about the color change, moving from that kind of white and green to more of a dark color. That was kind of a customer feedback thing. They wanted to be more kind of dark web themed. So it was a little bit of a theming and branding shift. But to address that question, yeah, it was feedback from the customer, the nature of the company. That was kind of what led to that theming change. But as we go on through the process here, like, so we've talked about the general like 6 steps: the assessment phase, the implementation phase. So now it kind of becomes a question of when and how. So and this needs some consideration. You got to take some time to think about the when, because when can have a substantial impact on your budget. We'll go ahead, Svetlin.
I can step on this on the staging and timing, because this is one of the concerns about the modernization, just the execution process, how to handle the existing experience while modernizing, how not to hurt the running business. It starts with setting the right set of KPIs on the modernization project that reflect the real business results, and this ensures that we are all in sync for the goal. Also, a proper evaluation of a solution delivery lifecycle would enable a good modernization roadmap that will respect the R&D process, either internal or delivered via partners. The modernization effort can be staged and delivered, starting with the high impact issues, together with the low-hanging fruits, and then continue with the less urgent problems. This will lower the risk for the business and enable us to deliver results faster to our customers.
Yeah, so sorry about that. I didn't mean to switch to that slide. And one of the things that we talked about as part of this process as well, Simona touched on it, and you kind of touched on it earlier in the presentation, was kind of how to gain some efficiency, and design systems is one of the things that we've seen over the last number of years as we've worked on a number of these projects. Creating these design systems can really lead to some wild efficiency gains, in addition to just cohesiveness across your platform, right? So, and you're, Svetlin, I'm going to let you talk on this one again, because you're the expert on design systems. How important are these?
They're very important. So this is a great way to pave the road for easy customization and modernization in the future development. So as you mentioned, modernization is not a one-time effort. It's just a continuous process, and a design system consisting of components on both design and development sides that are in sync and provides the needed middle ground for collaboration between designers and developers is crucial for this ongoing process. When you have a design system in place, it's very easy to propagate mass changes to your product or set of products, update the visual experience in an easy way, and maintain consistency across the company portfolio. While creating a design system today is a time-consuming and expensive tasks, given the complexity of this design to development workflow, we are providing tooling and automation that dramatically speeds up the process of creation and also maintenance of such design systems. Currently, we provide component sets for different frameworks like React, Angular, Vue, Blazor that support excessive theming and customization, and we also provide UI kits for the designers that match this out-of-the-box styling of those UI components. Having those assets and the unified theming mechanism, it's very easy to create a color variation of an existing theme. And for more dramatic, more advanced capabilities, high level of customization, probably you need to do your own design system to match your brand's guidelines and you can just contact our team or enroll in Unite UX preview release on the Telerik website. This is one option for you, and also you can just schedule a call with our partners to walk you through custom design, system creation.
Exactly. We're definitely ready to field those questions if you have any. But just again, like Svetlin said, you know, the biggest benefits of investing the time to develop these design systems are really that cross collaboration between your development team and your design team. Having that synchronicity between, is that a right word? Synchronization? We're making up new words today.
You had first, yeah.
We're making up
I
words.
think we understand what you mean.
Yeah. But that, you know, it makes everything a lot more efficient. And it makes when you have a large ecosystem, this might not be such a concern for a very small solution. It probably should still be though. But when you have a large solution and you need to manage a lot of assets across it, that's where these really shine, and that's where you can really win with efficiency and, you know, not wasting time between design and development. So.
Yeah, you can start small and evolve gradually. You can start with UI components and UI kits that are in sync, then customize for a small portion of this visual appearance by using a team builder. And for more advanced capabilities, there is Unite UX solution.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, and we're essentially trying to cover the full range of advice or tools or expertise that you may need. So it might be as small as a little blog post with a guideline, or a webinar like this one, or just a little bit of a consulting, or doing the whole thing for you. We want to make sure that regardless of where you stand in that range, that we have something to help make your journey easier and more effortless. So. Yeah, if you need anything that we maybe not have posted or shared on the website, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to put together more resources, or sit down with your team and discuss how we might be able to hand beyond that. And I think, yes, I think we are good to move on. We actually only have 3 minutes. Sorry for taking a bit longer from the Q&A section, but we can go through a few questions now, and we'll follow up on the rest after the webinar individually. And I'm just scrolling through the ones that we haven't answered yet. And I'm seeing the first one, which is, which software is best for modeling user flow in diagrams?
Yeah, we covered this a little bit. Adobe Xd is one. You know, I think Sketch was another one that Svetlin mentioned. I'm not specifically familiar with those. I use Xd myself, but there's a number of them.
Figma is also a great solution, and it has great collaborative capabilities. When you are in the design phase, you can bring all the stakeholders in Figma. The whole design team can work on a single file without any problems, and basically move forward very fast.
Good. Okay. And a question by Peter Woolley: what other services do Resolute Software offer? Can you offer an assessment on UI UX? I think we answered that. Yes, we do. Just reach out to us. We can get that discussion going. We can, as I said, have a very staged approach. So whatever whatever is needed in your particular case. And then another interesting question: how do we change human behavior through UI or UX?
That's a great question.
I think that's an interesting one.
I would love to have a talk about that one on its own, because that's a big topic and I love it.
Yeah. I'll probably let Svetlin talk about that, but from my experience, I think the user experience, if it's engineered, because I think it's an engineering where you focus the attention of people both through visual clues, but also through the possible action points that you give them, this is how you engineer or change the human behavior. So if you understand how human attention works, I think you can have a pretty successful user experience and interface based on that. But yeah, I think we, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, there is a scientific way of approaching this also from a behavioristic point of view. You have certain things that you should be aware when just creating these interfaces to accomplish certain goal. It's not an art. It's something that not only should be beautiful and eye-catching, but to serve us certain needs, certain business needs. You want to accomplish something with this interface, and also your users need to just find a solution to their problem through your offering. So there are certain things that have to be to work together seamlessly in order to accomplish this.
Exactly.
Hey, Simona, I'm going to jump in here. There were a couple of really relatively technical questions. Some that talked a little bit more about Telerik tools between Windows and the web tools, and some other ones. We're not going to cover those today. Mostly, well, I know I'm not, because I'm not as technically minded as I need to be to answer those. But we'll get those answers to you directly. So just be aware, we'll reach back out to you individually on some of those questions specific to the tools.
Exactly. Yeah, there are a number of questions that we didn't have time to cover. So since we're at the top of the hour, we'll reach out to you individually. So yeah, this is essentially all the time we have for our webinar today. We hope it was interesting and valuable for all of you, that we managed to bust a few myths about UI modernization. Please look for our follow-up email with the recording and those individual follow-ups that we mentioned. And on behalf of our speakers here, Svetlin and Brandon and Sean, and on behalf of Progress in Resolute Software, thank you very much for joining and taking the time to hear our discussion today. And have a great day ahead. We'll be in touch.
Thank you,
Take care.
guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.